Chapter 21, Zephyr Acupuncture. Even though she had no problem walking normally with her leg injury, she faced great difficulty in her training. It felt as though poison had soaked into her bones in the past half year. There didn't seem to be a single day she spent in happiness. Precisely so, she became the current who was a little fearful towards strangers, as well as reticent. Initially, she thought that her injury would stay with her for her entire life, yet she didn't expect that the Zhang Xuan Loshi, whom everyone thought was trash, would say it is a small matter. She found it hard to believe what her ears were hearing. If it was a moment ago, she might have thought that Zhang Xuan was simply bragging. However, from the instant he pointed out the reason behind her injury, expectation started to well up in her. The reason why I had you to come into this room individually is to treat you. Alright, relax your entire body. Zhang Xuan retrieved a medium-sized jade box from the room and opened it gently with numerous silver needles of different lengths. During the training sessions of a martial artist, it was easy for one to incur injuries. Thus, the academy prepared a kit of such in every single classroom to help boost the blood circulation of the wounded, as well as to temporarily ease the injury. Yes. Wang Ying listened to the voice of the young man, which was steadfast, confident but without a trace of arrogant, and replied somehow. Wang Ying trusted the man before her from the depths of her heart, and her tense body relaxed. So, sitting on his original spot without moving, he grabbed a silver needle and flicked it over. A soft sound, and the silver needle he infused with Zenki shot tautly towards Wang Ying and pierced her leg. This is Zephyr Acupuncture? Wang Ying widened her eyes as her slim body trembled yet again. Zephyr Acupuncture. It was a method which made use of a martial artist's control over his strength to control the pathway of the silver needles to pierce the correct spots without coming into contact with the patient's body. In this way, a male physician would be able to apply acupuncture without coming into proximity to a female patient. This way, awkwardness between the two was able to be avoided. Such a method of practicing acupuncture might seem simple, but it was actually incredibly complicated. Firstly, it required the martial artist to hold absolute control over his strength. If there was a slight imprecision, there was a high possibility that it would result in failure. Furthermore, one's eyes must be sharp. It was difficult to recognize the exact acupoints beneath the patient's clothes. If the physician were to recognize the acupuncture inaccurately, all kind of troubles could happen. Master Yuan Yu had once said that one must at least attain the cultivation level of Fighter 5 Dan Dinglai realm to practice Zephyr Acupuncture. Had the teacher termed as trash in the academy reached such a level? Impossible. Those who have reached Dinglai realm were all famous figures in the academy, such as the famous teacher Lu Xun. According to Liu Loshi, Zhang Xuan Loshi was only a Fighter 3 Dan Zenki realm. There was still a huge way to go before he reached 5 Dan Dinglai realm. A Fighter 3 Dan Zenki realm was capable of executing Zephyr Acupuncture? She found it unbelievable. Su. While she was still in a state of disbelief, the young man flicked a few more silver needles towards her. A few gusts of wind whipped up and the silver needles pierced into her leg with the exact same depth. This showed that the other party had already reached a rather advanced level of his control over his strength. The silver needle pierced into the flesh of her leg just as Wang Ying was about to ask Zhang Xuan how he intended to treat her. His hand slid past the needle and the Zenki that was contained in the needle activated and probed into her body. As the Zenki entered her body, she felt a tingling sensation in her leg. The acupoint which was sealed previously immediately opened under the surge of the Zenki. This is superior Zenki. As the tingling sensation spread across her entire body, Wang Ying clearly saw the look of the Zenki in her body. Clear like water, deprived of any impurities. This is the quality that only superior Zenki would possess. Superior Zenki? That is something that can only be cultivated if one possesses a god or saint cultivation technique in the entire Danxuan kingdom. It is unheard of for anyone to cultivate superior Zenki yet. To think the lousiest teacher in the academy possessed it? It can't be that I am seeing things done. While she was still overwhelmed by shock, her body relaxed completely and slumped. By then, the silver needles had already been retrieved by the other party, following which, Wang Ying felt a surge of relaxation in her leg, a comfortable sensation which she had never experienced. After her injury, although she was still able to move normally, her legs felt as though they had been plastered, plagued with a stiff sensation at all times. At this moment, wave after wave of pleasant sensation surged through her leg, as though it had broken through some shackles. Her leg felt incomparably nimble and lively. My leg. She might be slow-witted, but it was clear to see that the injury on her leg had been cured. Teacher, thank. Wang Ying's knees slackened and she kneeled onto the floor. Her eyes were entirely red. For this day, she had waited for a very long time. In fact, she even felt despair at her situation. Never in her dreams would she imagine that such a stubborn illness would be cured by the academy's worst teacher. It seems that the fact is that he is a very capable person, just that he maintains a low profile. Such a thought popped into her head. If he wasn't intentionally maintaining a low profile, regardless of how his lessons were like, just the fact that he was able to cure her legs means that he was more than capable of building up his reputation in this academy. How else was it possible for him to be the last in the teacher qualification examination? With such a thought in mind, Wang Ying kneeled to the floor and acknowledged Zhang Xuan as her teacher from the depths of her heart. All thoughts of withdrawing from his tutelage were dispelled. Now that your leg injury has recovered, go out and train properly. If you have any other problems, come over and find me afterward. Zhang Xuan gestured and entrusted her with a task. By the way, call Liu Yang over. Yes. Wang Ying replied excitedly before walking out of the room. I intend to withdraw from his lessons later. Are any of you all with me? In the classroom, after Liu Yang, Zheng Yang, Zhao Yan and Yuan Tao had introduced themselves to one another, Liu Yang said, to tell the truth, he felt extremely dispirited, scoring within the top 100. There were many top teachers who were vying for him, yet, in the end, due to the bet made between two teachers, he was lost to the worst teacher in the entire academy. The intense feeling of being wronged made him go into a frenzy. No matter what, I have to withdraw from his lessons today. Even if it means that I have to withdraw from the school, no one will be able to halt my footsteps. I also want to withdraw from his lessons, but if Zhang Xuan Loxi were to be angered, it is hard to tell what he might do. Fatty Yuan Tao couldn't resist saying, angry? So what if he is angry? What can he do? I don't want to go berserk from his misguidance. Liu Yang scoffed. Berserk? Zheng Yang looked over doubtfully. He only knew that the teacher before him scored badly for the teacher qualification examination. Being the last of the lot, he had never heard of the incident of a student going berserk from his guidance. Liu Yang continued, if you don't believe it, just wait and see when Wang Ying walks out later. Her face will surely be awful. She will feel like she has been scammed. I have already long heard of Zhang Xuan Loxi's teaching standards. If he was able to offer proper pointers, he wouldn't have landed in such a state, being viewed in contempt by the other teachers. Just as they were speaking, the door opened and Wang Ying walked out with an excited look. Liu Yang was taken aback initially. He thought that she would be depressed, yet contrary to his expectations, she was smiling happily. The other few students were also puzzled. Their joy came from the depths of her heart. She must have reaped some great rewards for such an expression to appear. Could it be that the teacher with such a horrible reputation could give proper pointers? To get a student to be so excited in just a single session, as though she had attained some precious treasure, probably even the famous Lu Xunloshi wasn't capable of such a feat. Liu Yang, teacher called for you to enter. Oblivious to what the others were thinking, Wang Ying informed him before going to one corner to start training. Me? Liu Yang clenched his jaw. I would like to see what pointers you are able to offer me. If you can't offer me any good pointers, I will withdraw from your lessons. Muttering silently in his heart, he walked into the room. Chapter 22, The Reason Behind Xiao Ya's Illness. Liu Yang might have been guided by Zhang Xuan previously, but he didn't believe that the latter was capable. Rather, he thought that Zhang Xuan simply got lucky. After all, asking someone to use a different hand to execute a punching routine didn't involve much skill. Thus, from the depths of his heart, he still looked down on the teacher in front of him. Teacher. Walking into the room, he cupped his hand and bowed slightly to Zhang Xuan, although his tone wasn't very respectful. I have seen you execute your battle techniques before. Seemingly oblivious to his disrespect, Zhang Xuan continued. To be able to train Soaring Flower Fist to the rookie level and Dragon Inch Fist to the expert level, not bad. What? How did you know that I am trained in Dragon Inch Fist? Hearing those words, Liu Yang, who was disregarding Zhang Xuan, almost fainted from shock. Logically, due to his weak strength, he should have focused on his cultivation technique. Even if he had to learn battle technique, he should have practiced a normal battle technique such as Soaring Flower Fist instead of Dragon Inch Fist. Dragon Inch Fist, being a mortal lower tier battle technique, was much more formidable than the Soaring Flower Fist. In order to become stronger, he hid the fact that he was practicing this punch routine from his family members. Ever since his Dragon Inch Fist reached rookie level, he had never executed it in front of anyone else previously. The battle technique which he showed Zhang Xuan was the Soaring Flower Fist, yet Zhang Xuan was able to tell that he practiced the Dragon Inch Fist and that it was at the expert level. How could he tell? There are shadows of the Dragon Inch Fist in your Soaring Flower Fist. Naturally, Zhang Xuan couldn't possibly reveal that it was due to the Library of Heaven's Path. He didn't even blink when telling an outright lie. You can even tell from that Liu Yang was still in a state of disbelief. The two skills weren't even in the slightest related to one another previously. He also executed the Soaring Flower Fist in front of Cao Xunloshi, but he wasn't able to tell that much from it yet. The academy's worst teacher was able to see through it with one glance. Was this for real? While he was still holding doubts in his heart, the teacher sitting before him continued. Reaching the level of an expert, your Dragon Inch Fist holds considerable might. However, do you feel an ache under your armpits and an itch in your Jianjinaku point whenever you execute it? This. Taking a few steps back, Liu Yang looked as though he has seen a ghost, fear appearing within his eyes. Not only were the words of the other party correct, they were exactly spot on. It was as though he had seen him training. How did you know? Liu Yang couldn't help but ask with a pale face. It is very simple. You have been practicing an inappropriate battle technique. If you continue training at this rate, I can guarantee that the muscles of your entire arm will be destroyed within 3 years. Even immortals will find it hard to save you. In fact, the effects are already apparent now. Do you feel your body going stiff when you are sleeping at night, sometimes even spasming? Zhang Xuan questioned. Liu Yang trembled. Indeed, he had such a condition, just that. He thought it was due to overexhaustion from excessive training, so he didn't pay it much heed. Never in his dreams would he imagine that it was due to him practicing the Dragon Inch Fist. Dragon Inch Fist. It is a skill which regards one's body like a dragon and emphasizes the concept of might in every inch of your body. If you had reached Fighter 4 Dan Piga Realm and had Zenki nourish your muscles, there won't be any side effects from cultivating this battle technique. However, you are only in Juxi Realm and your body is far too weak. Forcefully cultivating this battle technique will only cause your body to be injured as time passes. The injury will only worsen. This is also the reason why, although you aren't left-handed, your left hand possesses significantly greater strength than your right hand. That is because you practiced the Dragon Inch Fist with your right, causing great damage to it. If you don't stop now, you will become crippled. Zhang Xuan warned. Teacher, save me. At this moment, Liu Yang no longer possessed the arrogance he had when he first walked in. His knees weakened and he kneeled to the floor. At this moment, he understood that the teacher before him was definitely an expert, a master among experts. That was because everything Zhang Xuan said fitted perfectly with what was happening to him. If Zhang Xuan didn't voice it out, Liu Yang wouldn't have paid much attention to it. However, now that he had stated all of it out clearly and logically, Liu Yang immediately understood that everything he said is true. In the face of such an expert, what rights did he have to remain arrogant? It was laughable that he thought that he felt wronged for acknowledging him as his teacher. Only now did he realize how fortunate he was. Before acknowledging Cao Xun, he had also met quite a few notable teachers in the academy and displayed his battle technique before them. However, they were unable to tell that he was trained in the Dragon Inch Fist. Needless to say, seeing through the fact that his right arm was injured, First, stop training in the Dragon Inch Fist and try your best to raise your cultivation. As for the injury that you have sustained and accumulated, I will think of an idea to solve it. Zhang Xuan declared. All right, call Zhao Yan. Yes. Liu Yang nodded his head hurriedly, not daring to say anything further. He quickly walked out. The moment he walked out, he saw Zheng Yang, Zhao Yan, Yuan Tao staring at him. Have you withdrawn from Zhang Xuan Loxi's tutelage? Yuan Tao asked in agitation. Withdraw? Why should I withdraw? Liu Yang waved his hand and declared proudly, his face not turning red in the slightest. He who teaches me for one day is my father for life. I, Liu Yang, will not withdraw from Zhang Xuan Loxi's lessons. What kind of person do you think I am? Do I look like that casual of a person? I really don't know what you all are thinking, to be thinking about withdrawing all day long. Aren't you all embarrassed? Zheng Yang, Zhao Yan, Yuan Tao, shameless. He's too shameless. Just a moment ago, he was still going on about how determined he was to withdraw from Zhang Xuan's lessons, yet, in the blink of an eye, he changed his words entirely. Exactly how thick is his skin? That teacher is probably truly capable. Seeing the vastly different attitudes between the two when they went in and came out, Zhao Ya thought in her mind as she pushed the door open. Actually, after hearing Uncle Yao Han's words, it wasn't like she never wavered in her determination. However, the truth still stood that the other party was able to point out her illness accurately, giving her hope for a cure. After all, she was too embarrassed to speak of this illness in front of others, so it was impossible for her to reveal it to too many people. Sit down. Upon walking into the room, she saw Zhang Loxi and sat down. Teacher, you said that you can cure my illness. Zhao Ya reddened. Zhang Xuan nodded his head. Your illness is an easy problem. Actually, it wasn't very difficult to solve Zhao Ya's problem. She wasn't really sick, but rather, she possessed the pure yin body, a physical body which countless women desired. The yin energy in her body was overpowering, and if it was directed correctly, her cultivation would soar rapidly. However, it was a pity that no one in Bai City noticed it and even chose a yin nature cultivation technique for her. For the other females, it was indeed quite a good manual to cultivate. However, for Zhao Ya, who possessed a pure yin body, to cultivate such a cultivation technique, it was simply worsening the situation for her. The yin energy in her body accumulated gradually over time. When she was younger, it was still undetectable. However, as her body developed, the unique traits of a female became apparent, and she would start to find it hard to suppress her urges. If she wasn't cured in time and continued on this way, she might become a being possessed by her lust and find it hard to satisfy her desires no matter how hard she tried. This was precisely the reason why such an awkward situation was occurring to her. This Zhao Ya was taken aback. She didn't know that she possessed a pure yin body. In fact, even her father was oblivious to the fact. However, the part about her cultivating a pure yin cultivation technique was true. Was this really the cause? White Jade Pure Maiden skill. It is an impressive skill, but it isn't suited for you. If you want to solve this problem at its roots, you have to find another new cultivation technique. After explaining the situation, Zhang Xuan stated, How did you know that I cultivate the White Jade Pure Maiden skill? Zhao Ya was taken aback. This cultivation technique had been passed down in the Bai City. Other than the Bai family, there were very few people who were aware of it. Even the butler Yao Han, who was at the entrance of the classroom now, wasn't too sure about it yet. The teacher before her was able to point it out instantly. Zhao Ya was in a state of disbelief. If I am capable of seeing through illness, naturally, I would be able to see through your cultivation technique as well. Zhang Xuan tilted his head 45 degrees as he assumed the look of an expert whose depth couldn't be seen. Cultivating a new cultivation technique can solve the problem? Then what kind of cultivation technique should I cultivate? Suppressing the astonishment in her mind forcefully, Zhao Ya asked, You should find a cultivation technique capable of unleashing the potential of your body, and not one that accumulates yin energy. How about this? I will go to the Academy's Compendium Pavilion to take a look for you to see if there are any suitable ones for you. Zhang Xuan said. Thank you, teacher. Zhao Yan nodded her head hurriedly. The problem hadn't been solved yet, but at the very least, she was aware of the cause now. A surge of exhilaration gushed through her heart. Zhang Xuan waved his hands to show that it was a small matter called Zheng Yang in. While Zhang Xuan was providing pointers to his students in the room, outside the classroom, a tall youth walked over in widened strides. Elder Liu, is what you said true? As the tall youth walked, he questioned the elderly following him behind. Young master, that is the truth. Young mistress has acknowledged Zhang Xuan as her master. Old Liu nodded his head quickly. If Zhang Xuan was here, he would definitely be able to recognize that the old Liu here was the person who tried to withdraw Wang Ying from his lessons yesterday. The person whom he called young master should be Wang Ying's elder brother, the genius of Hongshan Academy, the disciple of an elder, Wang Tao. Zhang Xuan? The teacher who scored a 0 for his teacher qualification examination? What rights does he have to teach my younger sister? Damn it. If I don't teach him a lesson today to let him know the price for deceiving my younger sister, I will not call myself Wang Tao. As Wang Tao walked towards the classroom, he declared furiously, Jianjin, shoulder well acupoint, right beside the back of your neck on your shoulder. Chapter 23, Troublemaker. Tanxuan City was the capital of Tanxuan Kingdom. To be capable of becoming one of the 4 great families of the city, the prowess of the Wang family was one to behold. Even the principal of the Hongshan Academy would have to spare some face for such a powerful family. To think that of all teachers, Wang Ying would choose to acknowledge a fellow who had scored 0 in the teacher qualification examination. That was an insult. A massive insult. Even though other people might not be aware of the affairs shrouding Zhang Xuan, as a student of the academy, Wang Tao had heard a lot about him. He had once misguided a student, causing his cultivation to go berserk, thus sullying the reputation of the teachers. This person was the topic of discussion and target of mockery over a meal or tea with his peers, yet, never in his imaginations would he expect his younger sister to choose to acknowledge him as her teacher. If the other students were to be informed of it, wouldn't he become a laughingstock? The more he thought about it, the more angry Wang Tao became. He walked towards the entrance of the classroom and spotted Yao Han, who was wrapped like a mummy. I see, it is young Master Wang Tao. As the butler of Bai City Lord residence, Yao Han had come into contact with many different powers. Given that Wang Tao was a talented genius and the son of the head of the Wang family, it was natural for Yao Han to be aware of his existence. You are glancing at him? Wang Tao's eyebrows shot up. After getting beaten up so savagely, not a single hint of his original appearance remained. Even Zhao Ya found it hard to recognize him in his current state. Needless to say, Wang Tao, I am Yao Han from Bai City. Yao Han said. Oh, so you are Butler Yao. Why are you? Wang Tao was slightly taken aback. I accidentally injured myself in the midst of training, Yao Han explained awkwardly before changing the topic. May I ask what young Master Wang Tao is here for? My younger sister has acknowledged Zhang Xuan as her teacher. I am here to take her back, as well as to teach the arrogant teacher a lesson. Wang Tao didn't even try to conceal his rage. Ah? Your younger sister? You mean Wang Yingxiaji? Yao Han was driven out of the classroom right shortly after he entered it. Furthermore, his attention was focused on Zhang Xuan the whole time, thus, he didn't notice Wang Ying's presence. Wang Tao nodded his head. I have heard that Wang Yingxiaji's talent is in no way inferior to yours. Why would she choose him? Yao Han was puzzled. My younger sister rarely comes into contact with the outside world and has an innocent personality. That fellow has a glib tongue, and I'm not sure what the fellow said, but my younger sister actually believed the nonsense he spouted. Recalling what old you told him, fury flared from Wang Tao. How vile. That fellow is a scourge. The scum among the teachers. Upon recalling how the young mistress of his family had fallen for his deception as well, he gritted his teeth angrily. Young Master Wang Tao, you have to teach that fellow a lesson. Wang Tao replied at the same time. He stared at him doubtfully. Right, Butler Yao, why are you here? Let's not talk about it. The more I talk about it, the angrier I get. Our young mistress had also fallen for the deceitful words of Zhang Xuan and acknowledged him as her teacher. Yao Han scoffed. You mean Zhao Yuxiaji? Wang Tao was taken aback. Yes. Yao Han nodded his head. Then why don't you barge in and expose that hypocritical fellow? Why are you waiting at the entrance instead? Wang Tao was bewildered. I wanted to expose that fellow, but our young mistress got agitated. I had no choice but to wait outside. Young Master Wang Tao, you came at a perfect timing. If you were to go in now, teach that shameless fellow a lesson and expose his ugly intentions, our young mistress would be able to see his true colors. Yao Han said. Rest assured, I will be exposing his fraud now. I will make sure that shameless fellow reveals his despicable self. Wang Tao gritted his teeth and nodded his head. Then, he kicked the door open and walked in with widened strides. On the other hand, Zhang Xuan had finally gone through the individual situations of his 5 students with them. There were quite a few flaws with Zheng Yang's spear. Zhang Xuan elaborated on them slightly, causing Zheng Yang's strength to soar once again, and the latter rejoiced over his improvement. On the other hand, Yuan Tao had never cultivated a proper cultivation technique or battle technique. Zhang Xuan took out the academy's basic Hongshan 9 Dan formulas, 1 Dan formula, and modified it slightly before passing it to him. He didn't modify much of it, so there was still a large gap between it and the Heaven's Path divine art that he was currently cultivating with. Even so, it was still several times more effective than the original Hongshan 9 Dan formula. With just one look, Yuan Tao almost leapt up from the joy rushing through him, overjoyed to realize that he had acknowledged an accomplished teacher. Alright, I have roughly gone through the problems you all have on you. You all need to persevere in your training. Returning back to the classroom, Zhang Xuan gathered all 5 of his students together and was explaining the situation to them when boom, the door to the classroom was kicked open, following which, a furious howl echoed in the room. Zhang Xuan, withdraw my younger sister and Zhao Yuxiaji from your lessons right now, otherwise, I will make you will suffer. Following which, Wang Tao rushed in and stood furiously before Zhang Xuan. His eyes were dyed crimson red, as though he was ready to murder someone. Big brother, seeing her elder brother in such a state, Wang Ying was shocked and immediately rushed forward. Don't interfere in this. He pushed his younger sister to his back before staring coldly at Zhang Xuan with a haughty expression. He said, Zhang Xuan, it is one thing if you use your nonsense to deceive others, but to think that you would dare to coax my younger sister with lies, you are seeking death. I will give you 10 seconds if you withdraw my younger sister and Zhao Yuxiaji from your tutelage now. I can let this slip. If not, even if you are a teacher, don't blame me for not going easy on you. Boom. With a scornful look, Wang Tao released his full strength, revealing a very powerful aura. He had reached the level of a fighter for Dan Piga realm. No wonder he could become a disciple of an elder. This strength was in no way weaker than an average teacher of the academy. I am conducting lessons right now. Get out. Zhang Xuan looked at him blandly. Conducting lessons? With your standard, what could you possibly be teaching? Wang Tao mocked him coldly. Get out? You want me to get out? Who do you think you are? The only reason why I call you a teacher is out of basic respect. Look at how you are you not aware of it? You are only a lowly teacher who is still in Zenki realm. Don't act like you are a big shot before me. Even if I were to beat you up today, the most that would happen is a reprimand by the elders. What can you possibly do to me? He wasn't wrong. There were quite a few disciples of the elders in the academy who were stronger than the teachers and held esteemed positions in the academy. Even if a conflict were to break out between them and the teachers, the most they would do was to reprimand them slightly. There wouldn't be any severe punishments. Big brother Wang Ying's face paled. She was very aware of the fact whether the teacher before her had standards or not, when all of the expert physicians in the entire Tanxuan kingdom could do nothing about her problem. He was able to solve it casually. How could such a person possibly have no standards at all? Just as he was about to stop that rash elder brother of hers, the face of her teacher darkened and his eyes narrowed. Scram. To ask me to scram. He didn't expect that the trash of a teacher would get him to scram just as he was about to continue speaking. He caught a glimpse of the cold gaze of the other party, looking into his eyes. Wang Tao shivered uncontrollably, as though he was a rabbit who had caught the gaze of a tiger under the oppression of a powerful aura. He retreated a few steps subconsciously and his legs trembled. He had only felt such sharp aura from his master. How could it possibly appear on the academy's worst teacher, a fellow who was just Fighter 3 Dan Zenki realm? It took a moment before Wang Tao regained his composure. In that instant, Wang Tao's face darkened like an ant's nest as his eyes took on a deep shade of red. In his eyes, even though Zhang Xuan was a teacher, he was not any more than a trash yet. This trash dared to shout at him and cause him to retreat out of fear. If this were to spread out, how could he possibly face any other people? How would he be able to maintain his prestige? You are courting death. Feeling humiliated, Wang Tao roared, and with a flick of his hand, the sword on his waist had been drawn. The sword stabbed out in a flash. Pa pa pa. At Fighter 4 Dan Piga realm, one would possess strength beyond 500 kilograms even before the sword reached him. The continuous sound generated from the friction between the sword and the wind created an oppressing atmosphere, as though it would be impossible to counter the attack. Zhang Loshi, seeing her elder brother striking out with such speed, Wang Ying's face turned ghastly white. Although she was impressed by the guidance of Zhang Loshi, she was well aware of the fact that the teacher before her was only at Fighter 3 Dan. He was far from a match for her brother. It was impossible for him to dodge the blow. He would definitely be injured. Frightened, she shrieked in fear and closed her eyes subconsciously. How could this be possible? Just when she thought that the Zhang Loshi who just resolved her problem for her would be wounded by the sword, she heard voices of disbelief from Xiao Yan and the others. She quickly opened her eyes to take a look and her eyeballs almost popped out from their sockets. She petrified on the spot. She saw her elder brother's incomparably powerful and mighty slash getting stopped in midair, and what was stopping it was the two seemingly weak fingers of Zhang Xuan Loshi. To block such a powerful blow with just the pinching of two fingers? Xiaoji, miss. Chapter 24, throw him out. Impossible. Wang Tao was also in a state of disbelief. Before he came, he had made sure to look into Zhang Xuan's strength back then. The information he got was that he was only Fighter 3 Dan Zenki realm, a weakling. How could he possibly stop his attack with just two fingers? In order to achieve such a feat, not only must one possess sufficient strength, he must also be precise in his timing, control over his strength, his positioning and many other factors. If there were to be a slight discrepancy in his judgment, it was possible for his fingers to be severed and he would be severely injured. The other teachers, or perhaps even the Pixie realm elders, would be unable to achieve such a feat. Yet, a fellow who was reputed to be trash, impossible. Coincidence. It must be a coincidence. Such a thought popped into his mind. A savage look appeared on Wang Tao's face once more, and exerting strength through his both hands, he howled, "Let go." He wanted to retrieve his sword that was trapped between the two fingers of Zhang Xuan. However, despite trying twice consecutively, to the point that veins were popping out on his temple and that he was about to vomit blood due to overexertion of strength, he was astonished to realize that the sword that was held between the Zhang Xuan's fingers seemed to be firmly latched onto his fingers. No matter how much strength he exerted, it didn't budge in any way. Could it be his true strength isn't Zenki realm? A peculiar thought appeared in his mind. But this is impossible. It hasn't been long since the last teacher qualification examination. Everyone in the academy is aware of the fact that he only has the strength of a Zenki realm pinnacle. Furthermore, even if he were to break through his current realm, he would only be at Piga realm, which is the same level as him. He wouldn't be so hard-pressed just by a mere two fingers of the other party. Scram. Just as Wang Tao was considering the peculiarity of the situation, a surge of might suddenly came rushing towards him through the sword, and the impassive words of the other party echoed by his ear. Before he could even react, his entire body was sent flying through the air. Boom. His head bashed through the door of the classroom. All right, let's continue on with our lessons. After casually throwing Wang Tao out, Zhang Xuan turned towards the rest and said blandly, Wang Ying, Zhao Ya, Liu Yang, Zheng Yang and Yuan Tao stared at one another. The turn of events left them unable to react, and they were on the verge of exploding due to the overwhelming shock. That was a Fighter 4 Dan Piga realm expert. Not mentioning how an attack of his full strength was easily dealt with. To think he would be thrown out with such ease. Wasn't this teacher of theirs the worst teacher with the lowest combat ability in the entire academy? How did he do it? Teacher has been hiding his strength? Suddenly, Zhao Ya came to a realization as her face flushed from excitement. The only viable explanation was that the teacher before her had been concealing his true strength. If not, how could he possibly point out the problems whom no one else could discern and boost their might with just a casual pointer? The others weren't fools as well. They clenched their fists in agitation, coming to the academy to come under the tutelage of the teachers, who wouldn't hope to be under the guidance of a capable teacher. Before this, everyone thought that their lives would be miserable. Judging from how they came under the tutelage of the academy's worst teacher, only now did they know that they have won in the competition of choosing one's teachers, an overwhelming one at it. The teacher with the worst reputation in the academy was actually a true worldly expert. When their path of thoughts reached this point, all of the excessive thoughts disappeared from their minds as they nodded their head vigorously. Even Liu Yang, who held doubts about Zhang Xuan's lessons, couldn't help but look over in enthusiasm, afraid that he would miss out a single word of his teacher. What Luxun Loshi and Wang Jiao Loshi, all of these had been thrown to the back of their minds. Not just them, even the elders would have to kneel when compared to Zhang Loshi. To rush in like this, I hope that young master is fine. Outside the classroom, older Yu looked worriedly at Wang Tao, who had barged into the classroom furiously. Rest easy. Wang Tao Xiao has reached Fighter 4 Dan Piga realm while the Zhang Xuan is still stuck at Zenki realm. Soon, he would be able to teach him a lesson and bring young Mistress Wang Ying out. Yao Han nodded his head with a bright smile on his face. Just as he was visioning the pathetic state the shameless teacher would be in with his teeth scattered all over the floor, he suddenly heard Wang Tao's furious howl from the room. It has begun. Yao Han's eyes lit up and the edges of his mouth crept upwards. If the Zhang Xuan was only the last in the entire academy, Yao Han wouldn't be bothered to interfere in his affairs. However, to think that he would dare to be disrespectful to the young mistress. If Zhang Xuan didn't execute some underhanded tricks, how could the young mistress possibly willingly acknowledge him as her teacher? If Yao Han were to make a move personally, he would definitely incur the ire of the young mistress, not to mention offending the Hongshan Academy. At that, it would be more than ideal for Wang Tao to make a move in his stead. Hongshan Academy was located in Tanxiu in royal capital, the home ground of the Wang family. Even if Wang Tao were to beat up a teacher, they would definitely have the means to deal with it. Furthermore, Wang Tao was the disciple of an elder and held an esteemed position in the academy. It was much more appropriate for him to make a move. I would like to see how would that trash of a teacher embarrass himself. The more he thought about it, the more delighted he got. Yao Han crept towards the doorstep, intending to open up a crack between the doors and peek through it when he heard a boom and the tightly shut doors burst open. Peng. Yao Han didn't even have the time to react from the sudden assault by the metal door. It slammed right into his face, rattling his consciousness in the midst of his daze. A head came crashing into him. Kaka. The intimate encounter between his face and the head created the crisp melody of the cracking of a bone, and the two remaining teeth that survived yesterday's attack after much difficulty dislodged valiantly. The intense pain caused Yao Han to convulse and a mouthful of fresh blood burst forth. His body wasn't fragile, but he had yet to recover from his injuries from the prior day. Yesterday, he had been bashed in his face and now, he was slammed by a metal door before a head came crashing into him right after. It was already quite a blessing for him to be alive at this point. Young master. Old Liu realized that the one who was sent flying was his young master and he dashed over, frightened. Damn it. Wang Tao might have knocked into the metal door, but with Yao Han cushioning his fall, he wasn't severely injured by that encounter. Standing up and recalling how the trash caught his blow and threw him out, he felt an intense fear. Although he shouted loudly, he didn't dare to approach the classroom anymore. Young Master Wang Tao, you faint-headed. Yao Han only realized at this point that the one who knocked into him was Wang Tao. With an intrigued expression, he struggled to stand up. Didn't you rush in to beat him up? How come you were the one who was sent flying out? I was practicing as a new type of battle technique. Wang Tao didn't dare to say that he had been thrown out by a trash, so he could only come up with something else. Battle technique? Yao Han's vision was still blurry from the previous impact. He hurriedly questioned. Did you expose the true face of that fellow? How did our young mistress react? Cough cough. I didn't have the time to make a move when my younger sister pushed me out. I think why don't we try waiting here? Wang Tao said with an embarrassed look. Just a moment ago, he was still declaring how he would make the other party suffer, yet the next moment, he was sent flying out. He wouldn't acknowledge such a shameful affair even if he were beaten to the verge of death. Wait? Yao Han scratched his head as doubts appeared in his mind. However, he didn't think that he should point them out, so he chose to change the topic instead. Wang Tao I have a question to ask of you, seeing how you are also a student of Hongshan Academy. Go ahead. Seeing how Yao Han didn't continue pursuing the events that transpired in the classroom, Wang Tao heaved a sigh of relief and replied, is there any female teachers in the academy who has Bai in their name? Recalling the fellow who beat him up the previous day, Yao Han's anger billowed. Bai? The most famous one of them all is the academy's female goddess, Shen Bairu. I heard that Zhang Xuan Loshi wanted to court her as well. He is truly a toad lusting over the flesh of a swan. Halfway through his words, Wang Tao paused abruptly. Before this, everyone knew that Zhang Xuan's abilities were subpar and his capability as a teacher was horrendous as well. With such standards, he dared to pursue the academy's female goddess Shenbairu. That's why everyone termed him as such. Now that Wang Tao had experienced the other party's strength firsthand and understood that he was on a different level from him, he found it unnatural to continue saying that he was a toad lusting over the flesh of a swan. Shenbairu? Zhang Xuan wants to court her? Yao Han's eyes lit up as he came to a realization the person whom the fellow yesterday was talking about must be her. He continued asking, other than Zhang Loshi, is there anyone else who is courting her? Shen Loshi is incredibly beautiful. The teachers who wish to court her are far too many for me to count. However, the most famous of them all is the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, Shang Bin Loshi. After pondering for a moment, Wang Tao looked over in suspicion. Why is Butler Yao asking such a question? Oh, I am just casually asking. Yao Han didn't touch any further on the topic, but a glint flashed past his eyes. I will be able to ascertain it after looking into whether this Shang Bin had gotten into a conflict with Zhang Xuan yesterday. If it really is him, regardless of whether he is the son of an elder, I would definitely make him suffer. When had the butler of the Bai City Lord, a figure that rose above the others, standing beneath only an individual, suffered such a great injustice? If he didn't seek vengeance on him, it would be hard to quell the resentment accumulating in his heart for it. He was willing to turn into a demon. While Yao Han was still considering whom he should find to gather intelligence, the person in question, Shang Bin, had just finished conducting a lesson and had left his classroom when he met a young man, Kaoxun Loshi. Shao, young master. Chapter 25. Looking for trouble. Shang Shao. Kaoxun said respectfully. Kaoxun Loshi, you were looking for me? Shang Bin looked over with a puzzled expression. They might be both teachers of the academy and they often bumped into one another, but their relationship was still stuck at the level of an acquaintance. Indeed, I have something which I would have to trouble Shang Shao with. Kaoxun hesitated for a moment before speaking. As long as it is something I could help you with, I will try my best. Kaoxun replied. As the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, there were quite a few teachers who came looking for him for favors every day and he had long gotten used to it. Is that so? Yesterday, I took much difficulty in admitting a student under my tutelage, but he was snatched away by another teacher through deception. Isn't Elder Shang in charge of the education bureau? I would like to ask if it is possible to transfer the student back to me. Cao Sun said. Liu Yang was the best student which he spent a lot of effort to recruit, yet he lost him to Zhang Ziyuan due to that bet when he returned. He got angrier and angrier the more he thought about it. Eventually, he couldn't bear it anymore and came to look for Shang Bin today. Shang Bin's grandfather was Elder Shang Chen, the head of the academy's education bureau. Allocating a student to another teacher would be quite a simple feat for him. Transfer back? Shang Bin frowned. If that student willingly came under the other person's tutelage, it would be difficult. You also know that students are much more troublesome nowadays. If they are dissatisfied with anything, they would report the incident to the royal court and the teacher union. Then we will. He isn't willing. I can guarantee that. Cao Sun hurriedly replied. Even if he isn't willing, if the other teacher is unwilling to let him go, it won't be easy as well. You know the school rules. Shang Bin waved his hand suddenly. He raised his head and asked, just now, you said deception? May I know which teacher is the one who coaxed your student over? It is our academy's trash teacher Zhang Ziyuan. Speaking of that young man, Cao Sun clenched his jaws and hatred could be plainly seen on his face. Zhang Ziyuan? Your student was coaxed over by him? Hearing that name once again, Shang Bin's rage burned once again. If it wasn't for this fellow, he would definitely be able to get a dinner date with his goddess. A fellow who was only fighter 3 Dan and scored a 0 for him teacher qualification examination would actually dare to disregard his authority. He was seeking for death. If it wasn't for the presence of the goddess yesterday such that it was inconvenient to resort to physical means, he would have definitely beat him until he was on the verge of dying. Yes. Since he is that kind of teacher, no humans would be willing to become his student. So, I would like to trouble Shang Shao to help me bring up this matter with Elder Shang and allocate my student back. Cao Sun said carefully, afraid that the other party would refuse his request. There is no need to bring this up with Elder Shang. I will settle this matter for you now. Shang Bin waved his hand majestically. You're going to settle the matter for me? The other teachers might still require the help of my grandfather for the reallocation process. But since we're talking about the useless trash Zhang Ziyuan, why do we have to go through so much trouble? We just have to go to him straight, and if he refuses, we will cripple him. Shang Bin gestured grandly. He might be at a loss in means to deal with other teachers, but towards the one who scored a 0 for the teacher qualification examination, it was simply too easy for him to make a stand to teach him a lesson. Disregarding his weak abilities, the crux of it was that no one in the academy would possibly come in his defense. The most important point of all was that he had intended to give Zhang Ziyuan a good thrashing to vent his frustration, but he had been vexed over the lack of a suitable justification for it. If he were to strike without a suitable justification, he would surely leave a bad impression with Shenbairu if she were to find out. But now, he had duped away the student of another teacher and the person in question had come over seeking for his help. He could make use of this reason to lash out at him. This he didn't expect that Shang Bin would be so generous. Cao Sun was taken aback. There is no need for this. Come with me. If you're afraid, I will do it for you. The corners of Shang Bin's lip curled upwards as a glint of brutality flashed across his eyes. Then, I will be thanking Shang Shao in advance. Cao Sun's eyes lit up excitedly as he nodded his head hurriedly. The two of them moved towards Zhang Ziyuan's classroom with widened strides. It didn't take long for them to arrive at the entrance of Zhang Ziyuan's classroom to see the mummy like Yao Han and the young master of the Wang family. Wang Tao, what are you doing here instead of training over at grandfather's? Shang Bin frowned. He might be the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, but he was still a little off in terms of standing in comparison to Wang Tao. Shang Bin Loshi. Wang Tao bowed. My younger sister was due to attend lessons. Here I intend to take her back. Shang Bin? Yao Han was still considering whom he should gather intelligence on Shang Bin from when he heard that the young man before him was Shang Bin. He hurriedly lifted his head to take a good look at him. You mean Wang Yingxiaji? Shang Bin's face darkened. Coldness radiated out of his eyes as he declared that Zhang Ziyuan is really too daring. To dare to dupe even Wang Xiaji. He must be tired of living. Looks like if I don't teach him a lesson, it would be hard to appease the crowd. Indeed, Wang Tao nodded his head. Since Wang Yingxiaji was duped to come under his tutelage, why didn't you barge in to stop him, and chose to wait here instead? Harumphing. Shang Bin looked over with a puzzled expression. That Wang Tao dared not to admit that he was thrown out, scratching his head. Just when he was perplexed over how he should answer, Yao Han, who was beside him, said, Isn't there a rule in the academy that states that entry into a classroom is disallowed in the midst of a lesson? Thus, we could only wait outside for the lessons to end. This is. Only now did Shang Bin notice the mummy like Yao Han. This is the butler of City Lord Zhao of Bai City, Yao Han. Wang Tao hurriedly introduced him. So, it is Butler Yao. I have long heard of your name. Shang Bin nodded his head and continued. There is such a rule in the academy that no one is allowed to barge into the classroom in the midst of a lesson. However, it doesn't matter in this case. You all can follow behind me to enter the classroom today. I will personally take care of the fellow who has no morals as a teacher and goes around conning others. All right. Hearing that he was going to make a move, Wang Tao's eyes lit up and followed closely behind him. Yao Han hesitated for a moment before following behind them. In the classroom, Hongshan 9 Dan formula. It might be the most basic cultivation technique of Hongshan Academy, but there are quite a few problems with it. For example, the 5 students sat in the classroom, listening attentively to Zhang Ziyuan's explanations. Despite it only being the first lecture, they were all incomparably shocked. It was as though they have consumed ginseng fruit and were getting drunk on his words. The few students present in the classroom, with the exception of Yuan Tao, have exceptional backgrounds. They might have never gone to an academy, but they had learned everything systematically. They have undergone lectures of many different teachers and even had the privilege of having Fighter 5 Dan and 6 Dan experts offering them pointers. However, they had never been to such a lesson in their entire life. The lecture gave them a feeling of enlightenment. They found themselves suddenly comprehending many things that they were perplexed in the past. The breath in their body seemed to be tempted to follow the methods which the teacher was describing to them, and a sensation that they would be able to break through any time now gushed through them. The lecture was simply too well said. Hearing Zhang Xuan's lessons, they realized that even the supposed high-level teachers paled greatly in comparison to him. This was especially so for Zhao Ya as the daughter of a city lord. Her father often deciphered cultivation techniques for her initially. She had always thought that her father was the best lecturer in the entire Danxuan kingdom after all. Her father's strength was clear for all to see. However, in comparison to Zhang Luoxi, she felt like a frog in the well. It was laughable. There was totally no way to compare the both of them at all. Zhang Luoxi's explanations were spot on. No matter how incredible the cultivation technique and battle technique was, he was able to immediately spot the flaws in it, causing one to be shocked and go into deep thoughts, unable to calm the agitation in them for a long period of time. Often, a single deciphered sentence of Zhang Luoxi would send them into thinking for half a day. After they finally comprehended it after much difficulty, they would realize that he had already been talking for a long period of time and that they had missed many of the knowledge which he had imparted then. Zhang Luoxi's standards are way too high. At this moment, the 5 students finally understood how deep the foundations of battle techniques and how wide the tree of knowledge was within this young man who wasn't much older than them. Previously, I laughably thought that Zhang Luoxi had simply lucked out to make my strength soar instantaneously. Only now do I realize that given his wisdom, it is a small feat for him to accomplish such greatness. There are more than 100 methods for him to make my strength increase by a fold. The previously arrogant Liu Yang couldn't help but tremble on the spot. In comparison to him, Cao Xunluoxi sigh, I better not compare the two of them. They are at totally different heights. There is no way to compare the two of them. It is like they both exist in different worlds. It is fortunate that they made that bet, otherwise, how could I possibly meet such a great teacher? The 5 students were each listening attentively to the lecture in agitation, afraid that they would miss some important knowledge. The door to the classroom was pushed open and a few men walked in with large strides. Chapter 26. Enlightenment Will Trial. Zhang Xuan, I didn't expect that your guts would be so inflated after not meeting for a day. Walking into the room, Shang Bin surveyed the surroundings and noticed that the trash had managed to admit in 5 students. A savage expression flashed across his eyes as he sneered coldly, to dare to deceive Wang Yingxiji, Zhao Yuxiji and the others, as well as to coax the student of Cao Xunluoxi to come under your tutelage instead. Where the hell did you find such courage? Shang Bin Luoxi? Cao Xunluoxi? Seeing the few people who just barged in, Zhang Xuan frowned. I am in the midst of a lesson. If there's anything you want to say, please say them after the lessons. Lessen your head. Shang Xiao came personally over, so what the hell are you acting so high and mighty for? Given your standards, it is already a blessing for the others to not be misguided by you, yet you talk about having lessons? You little brat who don't even know the basics. How dare you pretend like you're something big before us? Cao Xun mocked Zhang Xuan coldly. Since the both of them were already hostile to one another, there was no need for him to put on an act anymore. Get out. You're not welcome here. Zhang Xuan narrowed his eyes. You are still continuing on with the act? Zhang Xuan, do you even remember your own surname? Shang Bin laughed coldly. Quickly release Zhao Yuxiji and Wang Yingxiji from your lessons and reallocate Liu Yang back to Cao Xunluoxi. If so, I might choose to back down and not teach you a lesson today. Otherwise I'm afraid that you will have to spend this school term in a wheelchair. You want to make a move on me? Zhang Xuan glanced over. The academy forbids teachers from fighting one another within its compounds. Is Shang Bin Luoxi unaware of the academy rules? The academy rules are made for humans against others. I would still be worried about the consequences about flouting those rules. But towards you, do you think that there would be anyone in the academy who would stand up for a trash like you? Shang Bin declared with an expression that clearly spelled out his vile intentions. I get it. Is it because I offended you with my words yesterday? That's why you are intentionally seeking trouble with me now? Aren't you afraid that Shinbei Luoxi would be displeased by such actions of yours? Zhang Xuan harumphed. At least you are well aware of it since I have decided to teach you a lesson. Of course, I won't be worried about you talking nonsense. Shang Bin didn't deny it, and just as he was about to gleefully step forward to teach the fellow before him a lesson, he was interrupted by another furious voice. It's you. Yao Han's eyes turned red. Given how Zhang Xuan had offended Shang Bin yesterday and Shinbei Luoxi was involved in the incident as well, if Yao Han was still unable to figure out the culprit who beat him up, even he himself would suspect that he was a fool. What? Seeing Butler Yao rage out when he was about to punish Zhang Xuan, Shang Bin turned around to look at him, bewildered. Do you think that it is possible for you to be unaware of what you have done? Before Shang Bin could react, accompanied by a loud roar, a fist smashed violently onto his face. The heck? Shang Bin could only feel everything before him turning dark. The regions around his eyes bruised up. His body staggered for a moment before falling to the ground. To dare to beat me up to such a pathetic state, I will make you suffer for it. Recalling the agony he had undergone from the beating yesterday, there wasn't any hesitation in Yao Han's blows at all. Sitting onto Shang Bin's body, fist after fist came raging onto him like a storm. Butler Yao. Everything occurred too quickly. Wang Tao and Cao Xun were flabbergasted. Actually, they weren't the only ones who were taken aback. Even Zhao Ya, Wang Ying and the others stared at one another in confusion. Just a moment ago, when these few people came over to find trouble with Zhang Luoxi, Zhang Xuan's students were still quite enraged and had intended to stand up for him, yet, before they could do anything, the other side started fighting among themselves. Wasn't this incident too bizarre? This was especially so for Zhao Ya. She was well aware of the personality of Butler Yao. He was a very dignified and rational person who handled problems systematically. Otherwise, her father wouldn't have possibly allowed him to become the butler of their family. But what happened today? Why did he start beating up Shang Bin before he could finish his words? Probably, the only one who knew what was happening was Zhang Xuan. The reason why he intentionally mentioned that he offended Shang Bin yesterday and brought up Shenbairu's name was to remind Butler Yao of the two features of his attacker yesterday. In the end, just as he intended, he made a move on Shang Bin. Actually, this couldn't be blamed on Butler Yao for being rash after all. No matter who it was, if they were to be beaten up out of the blue for no good reason, they would definitely hold some resentment in their heart. Furthermore, he was of esteemed position and represented the image of Bai City, so he had never suffered such injustice. To add on, he had been angered by Zhang Ziyuan multiple times these 2 days, and his young mistress had been curbing him from assaulting him without an outlet to vent his frustration. It had been welling up in his chest at this moment, when he had met his enemy. How could he stand it any further? Butler Yao, what are you doing? Feeling the fists crashing down onto him like raindrops, the confused Shangbin could only feel his vision going dark. He almost threw up a mouthful of fresh blood. What was going on? This was the first time he was meeting this Butler Yao, and he shouldn't have offended him before, so why the heck was he so brutal? No matter how he tried to recall, he couldn't fathom how he could have possibly offended the other party. What am I doing? Stop acting ignorant here. Are you not aware of it yourself? Peng 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 peng. Butler Yao's fist came landing one after another without any moment of rest. Shangbin was a high-level teacher and had reached the level of Fighter 5 Dan Dinglai realm. Even so, there was still a distance between him and Yao Han's 6 Dan Pixie Roma. He wasn't even a match for Yao Han in a normal battle. Needless to say, a sudden assault, he was done in with just a single punch. Butler Yao, calm down, we can talk things through calmly. Only now then did Cao Xun and Wang Tao regain their senses, and they hurriedly pulled the both of them apart. At this moment, Shangbin's handsome face was swollen to the point that there was no difference between it and a pig's head. Damn it. Shangbin was about to explode from anger. Initially, he had intended to teach Zhang Ziyuan a lesson, but never in his dreams did he expect the Butler Yao from Bai City to suddenly go insane and assault him. At this moment, all of his accumulated rage channeled towards Butler Yao. No matter what personal grudges the few of you may hold among yourselves, please settle it outside the classroom. This isn't a location for you all to fight it out. If you all do not leave now and continue to interrupt my lessons, I will inform the Central Education Bureau and call them over. Zhang Ziyuan spoke up. Fine, just you all wait. Hearing that he would inform the Central Education Bureau, Shangbin turned around and walked away. If news were to spread about his current state, how could still possibly have the face to meet others? He must not allow any teachers to see him in his current state. Shang Xiao. Initially, Cao Xun thought that it would be an easy task with Shang Xiao making a move personally. He would definitely be able to get Zhang Ziyuan to return his student. However, never in his dreams did he expect to see such a situation occurring. Cao Xun hurriedly followed behind him. Soon, the two of them disappear from view. Uncle Yao, what are you doing? After the two of them left, Zhao Yao walks up and looks at her Uncle Yao, her face flushed red from anger. This Uncle Yao was normal in the past, so why was he getting more and more overboard nowadays? Young mistress, Yao Han didn't know how he should reply to Zhao Yao's words. After all, he couldn't possibly say that he had intended to sneak over to Zhang Ziyuan's dormitory in an attempt to castrate him, but ended up getting bashed up by Shangbin instead, and he did a moment ago was to exact vengeance for that. Alright, I am still in the midst of the lesson. I would have to ask for the rest of you to leave. Zhang Ziyuan gestured. After hesitating for a moment, Yao Han, Wang Tao and Old Liu left the classroom yet again. Damn it. After leaving Zhang Ziyuan's classroom, Shangbin cried out in anger that Yao Han must be taught a lesson. Zhang Ziyuan as well to dare to look at me contemptuously. He must be punished. As the grandson of an elder, his life had been smooth sailing all along. When had he ever suffered such injustice? Furthermore, the worst of it all was that he didn't even know the reason behind it. He was in the midst of talking when the other party suddenly rushed up to assault him in the blink of an eye. He found the scenario incomprehensible. That Yao Han must be an accomplice of Zhang Ziyuan. Otherwise, why would he make a move on Shang Xiao? I think he must have been ordered to do so. Cao Xun said, no doubt, that must be it. Shangbin agreed. He had never offended Yao Han, but the other party made a move on him without any warnings. It must be due to his declaration of wanting to teach Zhang Ziyuan a lesson. Are you sure that Liu Yang did not willingly acknowledge Zhang Ziyuan as his teacher? After a while, Shangbin calmed down and turned around to ask. I can ascertain that he didn't do it out of his own free will. Recalling the unwillingness on Liu Yang's face when he left yesterday, Cao Xun replied confidently. Great, if you're that sure of it. Go and apply for Enlightenment Will Trial. Shangbin said, Enlightenment Will Trial? This Cao Xun's face darkened. Enlightenment Will Trial was a special method to determine the allocation of a student who was vied by multiple teachers. When the academy is unable to make a judgment, the student would undergo the trial of the Enlightenment Will Tower, and the Enlightenment Will Tower would reflect his true thoughts in the form of a confidence meter. If the student was proven to be unwilling to come under the tutelage of the teacher of the student would be punished. On the other hand, if it was proven that the one who applied for the Enlightenment Will Trial was making a false report, he would receive an equivalent punishment. This was the final resort used when there was truly no means to determine the allocation of the student. Cao Xun was aware of it, but he felt that things have yet to get to such an irreconcilable point. Why? Are you lying to me? Could it be that the fellow joined Zhang Ziyuan willingly? Looking at Cao Xun's hesitant face, Shangbin's face darkened even further. No, he definitely did not join willingly. I will apply now. I will make sure Zhang Ziyuan will get what he deserves. Cao Xun nodded his head. Then hurry up. Looking at his compliance, Shangbin nodded his head in satisfaction. When you are applying for it, make sure to raise the punishment to the maximum. This way, Zhang Ziyuan would be in for a tough time. Perhaps he might even get fired. Punishment could be raised based on the applier's request. The higher the stakes were, the heavier the penalty on the side who failed the trial. Alright. Cao Xun's eyes lit up with excitement as he visioned the image of Zhang Ziyuan getting fired. Chapter 27. The Frenzied Wang Clan. Alright, we will end the lessons here everyone. Remember to try to comprehend the contents of this lesson when you get back. If there is anything you are unsure of, you can come over to me to clarify it. Zhang Ziyuan gestured. Yes. The 5 students answered in chorus before leaving the classroom. They didn't spend a long time immersed in the lesson, and there were even a couple of times where someone barged in to create trouble, but they still benefited greatly from it. It could even be said that if they were to persist on to try to comprehend what was taught, their cultivation would surely rise by leaps and bounds. The 5 of them left the room excitedly the moment Wang Ying walked out. Her elder brother, Wang Tao, grabbed her. "Go, let's return back to our clan." "Return back to our clan? Big brother, why must we return?" Wang Ying was taken aback. "You refused to listen to the words of your elder brother and chose to acknowledge the worst teacher in the academy as your teacher. I have already reported this matter to father, and he says that he would like to talk to you personally." Wang Tao harumphed. The first time he entered the classroom, he was thrown out. The second time, he returned without accomplishing anything. Judging from the expression on his younger sister, he knew that he would be unable to convince her to change her mind. Thus, he sent old Liu back to inform the clan of the matter. He intended to get their father to persuade her. His younger sister's personality might be pure and innocent, but she still listened rather obediently to the words of their father. Father fright could be seen on Wang Ying's face. Their father was the current clan head of the Wang clan, Wang Hong. He was a very strict person who rarely smiles. Even his children tremble before his presence. Zhang Xuan Loshi actually isn't the way that you all put him out to be. His lectures are very good. Wang Ying tried to retort. Say those words to father and see if he believes it. Wang Tao waved his hand, and without a second word, he pulled his younger sister out of the academy. Hongshan Academy and the Wang clan are both in Danxuan City, and they weren't too far apart from one another. In a short moment, the 2 siblings reached their destination, and Wang Tao pulled Wang Ying to their father's study. "Enter." The cold and strict voice of clan head Wang Hong sounded out. "Yes." Wang Ying trembled from fright upon hearing that voice. Clenching her jaws, she followed closely behind her elder brother into the room. In the study, clan head Wang Hong was sitting at the utmost center of the room. The few sitting behind him were the influential elders within the clan. There was also one youth who was sitting by the side. Wang Ying recognized the youth as the grandson of the second elder, Wang Yan. She went to the Hongshan Academy at the same time as Wang Yan. In the end, the latter managed to acknowledge the renowned Luxun Loshi as his teacher, whereas she acknowledged the academy's worst reputed teacher, Zhang Xuan. Father. The tense atmosphere in the study made Wang Ying dare not to breathe heavily. "Kneel down." Clan head Wang Hong's face darkened. The teacher played an utmost role on one's route of cultivation before entering the academy. He had reminded her time and time again to acknowledge Luxun as her teacher, yet, this lass, why can't you acknowledge anyone else? Why must you choose the worst one in the whole academy? When he heard that news, he almost died from sheer anger. "Pug Tong." Wang Ying shivered as she knelt down. "Do you admit your mistake?" Wang Hong asked coldly. Acknowledging one's teacher should be based on an individual's free will, so I didn't want to say too much about it. But are you unaware of the standards of this Zhang Xuan Loshi? The one who scored the worst for the teacher qualification examination and even left a student berserk. Does someone like that have the qualifications to become your teacher? Clan head Wang Hong said with a grave expression on his face. If you were unaware of the situation and were deceived by him, I would still turn a blind eye to it. But why didn't you listen to your brother's words? I heard that your elder brother asked you to withdraw from his lessons, but you refuted him? What are you trying to do? Clan head Wang Hong's voice became louder and louder, to the point that the study trembled with creaking noises. Hearing the reprimand of her father, Wang Ying's face turned red before she gritted her teeth and said, "Father, Zhang Xuan Loshi isn't as bad as the rumors put him out to be. He is a talented teacher, just that he keeps a low profile. I want to be under his tutelage. I will not withdraw from his lessons." She benefited greatly from just a single lesson. Wang Ying knew that coming under the tutelage of Zhang Xuan was an opportunity for her. If she were to miss this chance, she would definitely regret it for the rest of her life. A talented teacher? Haha, a fellow who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination? Wang Ying, you should listen to the advice of the clan head. Don't be deceived by the Zhang Xuan. You should learn from Wang Yan. He might have only gone on one lesson, but his strength has already increased by 40%. The guidance of Luxun Loshi is definitely top-notch in the entire academy. Hearing the words of the young lady, the other elders laughed as they shook their head. There isn't a single person in Danxuan City who is unaware of Zhang Xuan's reputation yet. You say that he is a talented teacher. What kind of joke is this? You hearing the words of his daughter, clan head Wang Hong was incensed. I don't care what you say, you have to withdraw from his lessons today. Otherwise, don't even think about stepping into this house ever again. I don't agree with your decision. Wang Ying might seem weak, but she had a stubborn temperament. She stood up and said indignantly, you all have never listened into Zhang Xuan Loshi's lessons, so what rights do you all have to say that his lessons are subpar? What rights do you all have to force me to withdraw from his lessons? We might not have listened into his lessons before, but do you think it is possible for his reputation and teacher qualification examination results to be falsified? An elder replied, Wang Yingxiji, stop being stubborn. There are so many students who can testify for whether his lessons are good or not. Do you think that you are the only smart one of the bunch? Another elder stated, I don't know whether the teacher qualification examination results are falsified or not, but I know that he has treated my legs and gave me pointers for my cultivation. I can easily execute a might that is 1-fold greater than previously. Wang Ying declared, treated your legs? What kind of joke is this? Even Master Yuan is unable to do anything about your legs yet. You claim that a fellow who scored 0 for the teacher qualification examination is able to treat it? Wang Yingxiji, even if you wish to lie in his stead, you should say something that is more believable. Everyone in the clan was aware of Wang Ying's leg injury. Hearing her words, a few of the elders scoffed coldly. If you all don't believe me, I will prove it to you all. Seeing the looks of disbelief on the elders' faces, Wang Ying didn't continue arguing and instead walked over to the strength measuring rock pillar and sent a kick towards it. Peng. The rock pillar shook and a string of numbers appeared. 205. What? Seeing this sight, clan head Wang Hong's eyes narrowed subconsciously. The few elders who were reprimanding Wang Ying a moment ago were also taken aback as their lips trembled from shock. The few elders here had specially looked into the injury of Wang Ying's legs and had deduced that it was impossible to treat it. They concluded that it would be impossible to exert strength in them, and just the fact that she was able to walk normally was already a blessing. Yet, to wield 205 kilograms behind such legs. How was this possible? After kicking the pillar, Wang Ying didn't stop. She turned around and struck on the pillar with a fist. Wang. Numbers displayed on the rock pillar. 120. A force of 120 kilograms behind her fists. You're still Juxi Realm primary stage. I thought you were only able to hit 53 kilograms when you left yesterday. How could it be possible for you to hit 120 kilograms? Clan head Wang Hong abruptly stood up as his voice quivered in agitation. 521 Dan Juxi Realm. Cultivators would learn innate breathing and sensing of spirit in the air. Also, they would gain the ability to look into their body and control the flow of spirit energy in their body with their mind. They would have a strength of 50 kilograms in their primary stage, 70 kilograms in the intermediate stage, 90 kilograms in the advanced stage, and 110 kilograms at the pinnacle. This was the mass that a cultivator would be able to carry with their present strength. It was normal for the strength behind their fist to be slightly lower or higher than the strength attributed to their level of cultivation. Normally, it would already be incredible to achieve an increase of 20% to 30% around that level. Even for a renowned teacher like Luxun, he could only induce an improvement of 40%. Despite not breaking through in her cultivation, being still in Juxi Realm primary stage, she was able to hit with a force of 120 kilograms, even stronger than someone at Juxi Realm pinnacle. This meant that her strength enhancement was greater than a single fold. That was too formidable. I only improved to such an extent due to Zhang Xuan Loxi's guidance. After hitting the pillar, Wang Ying stopped and declared calmly, with just a slight pointer, he is able to induce such a great improvement. Furthermore, treating your legs as well? Clan leader Wang Hong was in a state of disbelief in a few short steps. He walked to the front of his daughter with a single look. He immediately understood that his daughter's legs were truly cured. As the worst teacher in the entire academy, not only was he able to treat an injury Master Yuan Yu was unable to cure, he was even able to induce a massive improvement through a short moment of guidance. Was this for him? Can you tell us a little about the contents of the lessons he went through today? What did he talk about? After a short period of shock, clan head Wang Hong couldn't resist asking. Alright, today, Zhang Loshi talked about cultivation technique. However, as what he talked about was too profound, I could only remember less than a tenth of it. This is what he said. After hesitating for a moment, she mentioned everything that she recalled in her mind, gathering one's breath and nourishing it to think that there would be such a profound theory behind a simple Juxi realm. This is too incredible. If only I had undergone such lessons back then, I wouldn't be stuck in such a realm, unable to advance ahead. This is truly the theory derived from a true master. I am enlightened. Just by repeating a few sentences, the clan head and the elders in the room seemed to have gone into a daze, as though they were drunk on those words, on the verge of going frenzied. To be able to become the clan head and an elder of a prestigious clan, they all possess high levels of cultivation. Even the weakest of them are Fighter 6 Dan Pixu realm experts. After cultivating for so many years, they have a higher level of enlightenment towards cultivation, and they understood much more about it. Although Wang Ying was only reciting those words without understanding the underlying theories behind them, to them, those words were no different from the voice of God. It solved many of the mysteries that they were unable to decipher before in an instant, and they felt refreshed. He is truly a master. No, not even a master is able to explain such profound and mystical theories. Clan head Wang Hong's eyes radiated a bright light and his breath quickened in agitation. Father, father? Seeing her father on the verge of going into a frenzy, Wang Ying tried to pull him back. Ying, you must not withdraw from this Zhang Loxi's lesson at all cost. You must learn from him diligently. After clan head Wang Hong's consciousness was pulled back from a mystical realm, he looked at Wang Ying with a solemn expression and said, "But father, you just said that she didn't expect that her father, who tended to be conservative, would change his mind so quickly, to the extent that she was unable to adapt to it on the spot. Father didn't know that Zhang Loxi would be so incredible." Oh, right. At this point, clan head Wang Hong's face had traces of excitement and anticipation on his face as he asked, "Ying, can you ask your Zhang Loxi whether he is still accepting student? Let Wang Yan and Tao learn from him as well. Actually, why don't I become his student as well?" Clan head, as the leader of the Wang clan, how could you become the student of the low-level teacher in the academy? If word were to spread, how can our Wang clan continue to uphold our dignity in Danxuan City? Before clan head Wang Hong could finish his words, he was interrupted by the words of another elder. After reprimanding the clan head, the elder turned over with a bundle of smiles and said, "Look, I'm only a normal elder and I don't represent the image of the Wang clan. If it is still unacceptable, I can even resign from my position of an elder. So, can you all help me ask him if I am able to acknowledge him as my teacher?" Wang Tao, Wang Ying and Wang Yan, clan head Wang Hong, Ying Tao adding after someone's name is an intimate way to address one's sons and daughters, sometimes even close nephews, etc. Chapter 29, You Must Be Sick. Shenbairu, who was the compendium pavilion as well, heard the continuous sounds of footsteps and flipping of books. Initially, she didn't think much into, but as time passed, she started to feel that something was amiss with the situation. One would need to read a book slowly to comprehend its contents. How could it be possible for anyone to flip through it so quickly? Bewildered, she couldn't resist walking over to take a look, after which, she saw Zhang Xuan flipping the books from the first shelf. It was very apparent to see that he wasn't reading through the contents of the books, but more like looking for something. Is this the reason why Elder Mo denied him entry? After watching for a moment, she realized that the other party didn't have the intention to stop judging Shenbairu's heartbeat. Previously, the reason why she couldn't resist speaking out to help him upon seeing the difference between the current him and his previous self was because she wanted him to work hard so as to be freed from his current awkward position. However, she would have never imagined that this fellow wasn't here to study but to look for something. This was the Compendium Pavilion every day. There were innumerable teachers who come in, so it was impossible for there to be anything valuable hidden here. Flipping through these books so casually was almost a blasphemy to this Compendium Pavilion. How repulsive. Perhaps he knew that I would be coming to the Compendium Pavilion today, so he intentionally waited outside and came in to make such a ruckus to capture my attention. This would only provoke my ire. The image of the young man in Shenbairu's heart fell to the pits. Due to her beauty, many people have tried many ways to get on her good side, as well as to attract her attention. In her opinion, Zhang Xuan wasn't even trying to look through the books, rather, he was intentionally making those noises to change her opinion of him. In reality, she hated it when people made up this kind of show. After looking at her a moment longer, she ascertained her opinion. If he was truly here to browse through the books, how could he possibly be reading books of all genres? Furthermore, to be flipping through them at such rapid speed, he was probably unable to even ascertain the name of the manual, needless to say, its contents. With a darkened expression on her beautiful face, she walked over to Zhang Xuan. Zhang Loshi, what are you doing? Reading books. Zhang Xuan didn't realize that his actions have already been labeled as putting up a show and replied casually without raising his head. Reading books. Shenbairu harumphed coldly. Coldness emanated from her jade-like face as she said, if you think that your actions are cool and would attract my attention, please retract those immature thoughts of yours. Shenbairu, do not fall for such petty tricks. Furthermore, your actions will only incur my irritation. Oh. Alright. Zhang Xuan continued flipping through his books. He intended to imprint all of the manuals in the Compendium Pavilion onto the Library of Heaven's Path by today, and time was a little tight for him, so he didn't have the effort to spare to be chatting with others. Besides, in his opinion, the other party was simply being too self-important. What business did she have to do with what he was doing? You might be truly pretty, but it isn't like I have yet to meet a beautiful woman like you in the previous world. In the era of information, there are all kinds of beauties stored in the hard disk. Furthermore, they are skilled in blowing, pulling, playing and singing. A cold beauty like you does not hold much interest to me. I don't have the energy to think of ways to attract your attention. Since you understand it, please leave this Compendium Library. Stop wasting your effort here. Seeing how the young man's head remained lowered, still putting on a show, Shenbairu turned and gestured him to leave. Deng 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 deng. The sound of the footsteps of the young man leaving. This is more like it. Seeing how he gave up readily, Shenbairu nodded her head in satisfaction. Just as she was about to continue to read her book, she heard the sound of the flipping of books echoing in the library once again. Hualala. Hualala. Turning her head to take a look, she realized that the young man had no intention to leave. Shenbairu almost exploded from anger. Are you done yet? I have already said that doing this will just incur my irritation, yet you still persist in doing so. Is there a point to it? At this point, her slim figure straightened and she walked up to Zhang Xuan once again, and disgust could be clearly seen in her pitch-black pupils. Did you not hear my words? The more you behave like this, the more disgusted I would be with you. You won't earn my fancy like this. Are you sick? Seeing the other party coming over to bother him again, Zhang Xuan was a little irritated. He stopped his actions and said, you read your own stuff while I'll read my own. If you are really bored, you can squat by a corner and draw circles. Don't bother me here. It is not like I have never met a beautiful lady in my life before. Why are you acting so haughtily? She didn't expect the young man to speak like this. Shenbairu felt her sight blurring and she almost died from the overwhelming rage welling in her. Who was she? Hongshan Academy's #1 beauty, blessed with great talent and looks. Almost all of the teachers and students in the academy regarded her as a goddess. Before her, they would act respectfully, not daring to even speak loudly for fear of offending her. Yet, you dare to say I am sick? Even asking me to squat at a corner to draw circles? I am a lady, alright. Draw circles, draw your mum's fat head. Shenbairu felt a heavy and stuffy sensation on her chest that she was unable to relieve. Hualala. Hualalala. Her face flushed red from anger. Just as she was about to reprimand the other party, she realized that the young man had gone back to flipping through the books after being done with his words, not even sparing her an additional glance. Fine, fine. Continue putting on an act. See how I will reveal your true colors. Luo. Shenbairu gritted her teeth tightly and stomped her leg. This was the first time that a man had talked to her in such a manner. Fine, aren't you putting on an act of browsing through the books now? Let's see how long you can put up with it. When you are finally unable to continue on, I will expose you and leave you embarrassed. Then, Shenbairu no longer bothered herself with Zhang Xuan and instead angrily walked back to the manual she had looked for previously and casually took it out. Then, sitting in a corner in the room, she started copying it down. Initially, her mood was quite good today and she intended to study for quite a while to boost her knowledge, yet never in her dreams would she expect to meet such an infuriating fellow. In the midst of copying down her notes, she sneaked glances periodically towards him. The young man still continued flipping through all of the books with the same speed, seemingly adamant to leave no book unturned. It seems that as long as it was a book of the Compendium Pavilion, he would surely flip through it once. Let's see how long you can keep up the act for. After being rebuked by Zhang Xuan, Shenbairu no longer retained her calmness from before and she intended to make things difficult for him as she copied down her notes slowly. She waited for the moment when the other party was unable to keep up with the act. However, what left her bewildered was that the young man repeated his actions over and over again with the same astonishing speed from the very first bookshelf. He moved from one row to another, flipping through the books, from afternoon to night, not even sparing a single minute to rest. It had already been 6 to 7 hours, yet the fellow was still persisting on with the same motion. Even Shinbairu found it inconceivable at this point. If his aim was to attract her attention, she had already clearly told him that she detested such actions, so he should have stopped then. So, how was it possible for him to continue flipping through like this? Not to mention, for such a long period of time? Could this fellow's brain be convulsing or something? Has his cultivation went berserk and he himself became insane? Suddenly, a thought popped up in her head. She had heard that when one's cultivation goes berserk, one would start to do many abnormal actions. Could it be that flipping through books non-stop here be one of this kind of abnormal actions? She was looking at the young man with a bizarre expression as she started to think that the young man was abnormal when she noticed that Zhang Xuan stopping in his actions after flipping through the books in the final row. So much knowledge. After a consecutive 6 to 7 hours of hard work, he had finally imprinted all of the books in Hongshan Academy's Teacher Compendium Pavilion in the Library of Heaven's Path in his head. Through the compilation of flaws and strengths from the Library of Heaven's Path towards each individual book, he gained a certain level of understanding towards the cultivation technique, battle technique, pills, equipment forging, formations and such. With Xiao Ya's pure yin body, she should cultivate this manual. However, before that, I have to do some preparations. After imprinting the entire Compendium Pavilion, he finally understood how he should solve the problem with Xiao Ya's physical body. He couldn't resist heaving a breath of relief. He had even found out the loopholes and incomplete portions in the previous 3 dan of his cultivation. As long as he found some time to recultivate through them, he could correct and perfect them. When he was finally finished, he felt an ache in his stomach after working for such a long period of time. His hunger pangs had already long struck, just that he was oblivious to it then. Shaking his head, he started to walk towards the exit of the Compendium Pavilion. However, he had only taken a few steps when he saw Shinbairu standing before him, looking at him with a cold gaze. To think that this woman would still be here after he had flipped through the books for 6 to 7 hours. Couldn't be bothered with such a self-important fellow. Zhang Xuan continued walking towards the exit of the Compendium Pavilion. Stop it right there. When he has just walked through the exit, he heard Elder Mo bellowing at him. At this very instant, Elder Mo's face darkened to the point that it seemed like the coalescence of numerous storm clouds, ready to explode at any moment. He had tolerated this young man for too long. At this moment, there was only a single thought in his head: troublemaker, troublemaker, and troublemaker. Elder Mo. Zhang Xuan looked at him with a puzzled expression. Zhang Xuan Loshi. Elder Mo's face was cold with an intentionally harsher tone. He said, "You came to the Compendium Pavilion not to study, but to intentionally cause trouble. From now on, the Compendium Pavilion no longer welcomes you. If you step in here once more, I will break your legs." Causing trouble? Elder Mo, where did all these come from? I have been looking through the books seriously. How did I become a troublemaker? Although he had already duplicated an identical Compendium Pavilion in his head and no longer had to come here, he still felt displeased upon hearing those words. Why is it that when other people are here, you think of them as studying, but when I am here, you think of me as a troublemaker? What kind of logic is this? Aren't you being too unreasonable? Chapter 30. Shinbairu's shock. Shinbairu's shock. Reading seriously? A wind tugged on Elder Mo's beard and his face looked so red that it might explode at any moment. Not jotting down notes to decipher its content and simply flipping the books randomly. Tell me, who reads the way you do? Must reading involve jotting down notes to decipher its contents? Only now did Zhang Xuan understand why the other party was so mad. He was at a loss to respond. In his previous life, he was a librarian and his job scope was similar to that of Elder Mo's. However, back then, as long as one held a borrowing pass, he would be able to enter the premises and no one would bother whether he was eating or drinking inside. As long as one didn't kill someone or set the place on fire, he was basically free to do as he pleased. Initially, he thought that Elder Mo was making things difficult for him due to his previous self-astounding results at the teacher qualification examination. After such a farce, the reason ended up to be just this. These books are obtained through the relentless efforts of the Academy's predecessor, and every single one of them is the product of their blood, sweat and tears. If you are not here to study, then don't touch them. Flipping through them the way you do, what can you be doing other than creating trouble? Elder Mo flung his hands in anger. Fine, if you insist that I'm creating trouble, then just take it to be so. Zhang Xuan wanted to explain, but after thinking it through for a moment, he shook his head and decided otherwise. The matter with the Library of Heaven's Path must not be revealed. This also meant that he would be unable to explain his actions of flipping through those books frenziedly, since he won't be here in the future anyway. There was no need for him to clarify it. Besides, his reputation was already as bad as it is. It didn't matter whether it was sullied further or not. At least you're willing to admit to it. Now, scram. Upon his admittance, intense loathing could be seen in Elder Mo's eyes. He waved his hands, gesturing him to leave. I'll be taking my leave. Just as he was about to leave, a pleasant aroma surged into his surroundings and a figure appeared before him blocking his path. Shinbairu said, "Wait a minute. What is it now?" Zhang Xuan looked at her helplessly. "You read your own book while I read mine. Surely I didn't bother you then." Normally, when she stopped someone else, the other party would be leaping in joy, yet this fellow looked at her with an annoyed expression. Shinbairu frowned. "It isn't about that. Didn't you say that you were reading books in there? After reading for such a long period, surely you would remember some of its contents." "What do you mean?" Not sure what kind of tricks this woman was playing now. Zhang Xuan stared at her doubtfully. "It's simple. I noticed that you read 8 methods of pill refinement. It just happens that there are some parts of it that I am unable to comprehend, so I would like to consult you on it. Surely you won't reject my request?" Shinbairu asked. Actually, her plan was simple. Wasn't this fellow before her putting on an act by flipping through all those books? Thus, if she questioned him on the book and he was unable to answer her queries, his lie would be exposed. 8 methods of pill refinement? Zhang Xuan's consciousness jolted as the book appeared in his mind. Indeed, he had flipped through this book previously. If there's anything you are unsure of, feel free to ask and I will answer your queries. However, I have to eat soon and don't have much time to spare, so do hurry up. You, clenching her fists tightly, Shinbairu almost fainted from anger. His tone is as though a frustrated teacher answering the questions of a student seeking clarification. Firstly, I am a beauty. Secondly, I am a high-level teacher and one of the popular teachers of the school. If I ask you a question, it is obvious that I am testing your standards. Why does it sound like I am learning from you? Everyone has a field of specialty that expertise in, so teachers in the academy often consult one another to learn from each other. However, as a fellow who scored 0 in the teacher qualification examination, what makes you think that you are qualified for me to be consulting you? Suppressing the rage within her that was on the verge of erupting, Shinbairu grinded her teeth. Just a moment ago, I read a phrase in the book: if the herbs scatter, it would be difficult for the pill to form. If the herbs agglutinate, a yellow pill will form. I find these words a little bizarre and incomprehensible. Can Zhang Luoxi clarify its meaning for me? When she said the word clarify, her teeth almost shattered from the intense force between them, and the sound of its grinding was clear to hear. As a great beauty, if it wasn't to embarrass him, she would never seek guidance from a trash. You still want to ask questions despite that memory of yours. He didn't expect the other party to ask such a question. He pursed his lips and replied, the phrase should be: if the herbs agglutinate, it would be difficult for the pill to form. If the herbs scatter, a yellow pill will form. Its meaning is simple. When refining a pill, the moment that the herbal fluid or powder clumps together, it would be impossible to meld their medical properties together. On the other hand, if they are separated and mixed together thoroughly, the pill that would be formed will look like the yellows of an egg. After flipping through all of the books in the Compendium Pavilion, he was able to retrieve the correct method for the refinement of the pill with just a jolt of his consciousness. She might be able to stump others with such a question, but directing it towards him? What a joke. What's worst was that she even recited the question wrongly. Her standard was too subpar. How? You can't reply it, can you? What did you say? She thought that the young man would be unable to reply her question. Not even in her dreams would she fathom that Zhang Xuan would be able to answer the question so casually, unprepared for such a twist. Shinbairu was dumbfounded, her beautiful eyes almost popping out of their sockets. She intentionally recited the phrase wrongly, so that he would offer the wrong guidance. In her viewpoint, this fellow was just making up a show in the Compendium Pavilion, not absorbing the slightest bit of knowledge in those books at all. If she were to casually whip out the contents of a book, he would be foreign to them. Thus, she recited it inaccurately, so that he would make a fool of himself. Who knew that he would see through her inaccurate reciting and even offered the most correct answer? How is this possible? Could it be that this fellow has really remembered the entirety of 8 methods of pill refinement just by flipping through it? But that's impossible. He is a fellow who scored 0 in the teacher qualification examination. How could he possibly be knowledgeable in something as unconventional as pill refining? Alright, do you have any other questions? Stroking his shriveled stomach, Zhang Xuan hurried her. I still have more. Despite the overwhelming shock, upon seeing the impassive look on his face, Shinbairu immediately recovered and posed another question. There is another phrase that I don't understand when refining a metal in flames. Never meld them when it is impure. After finishing her words, she smiled coldly as she awaited for the stumped look on the other party. The question she asked previously was on pill refinement, while this one was a dictum on weapon forging. This was a phrase she saw on an ancient book. She was unable to understand the saying even after analyzing it for a month. In the end, she only managed to clarify it after consulting a master blacksmith. Initially, she only wanted to embarrass the other party to let him know the price of offending her, yet she didn't expect him to be able to explain the meaning of the words in the 8 methods of pill refinement. This provoked the competitive spirit within her, inducing her to come up with a difficult question to leave him speechless. Standing by the side, Elder Mo was surprised when Zhang Xuan was able to answer the first question. Even so, he wasn't particularly shocked. 8 methods of pill refinement was a basic manual that innumerable rookie apothecaries would have to learn, similar to what Hongshan 9 Dan formula was to cultivators. Even if one didn't learn pill refinement, it wasn't peculiar for them to know a thing or two about it. When Shinbairu asked the second question, he was stunned. That's because even he found it hard to decipher the meaning of these words. When refining a metal in flames, never meld them when it is impure. Just when the two of them thought that he would be incapable of answering, Zhang Xuan shook his head and looked at Shinbairu as though he was looking at an idiot. What is so hard to comprehend about these words? It just means that when forging weapons, one must first refine the respective materials in fire to thoroughly clear away all impurities. Only then can the weapon be melded together more effectively. May I trouble you to ask some harder questions? This basic knowledge can be grasped easily after reading more books. Shinbairu's slim body jolted. She had to consult many different people before she got an answer to this question of hers, yet this young man managed to point out the crux of the dictum instantly. Not just her, even Elder Mo almost fainted from astonishment. For Zhang Xuan to answer a question he didn't know the answer to, could it be that he was studying seriously when he was flipping through all those books? Zhang Xuan Luoxi, your answer seems to be incorrect, though I remember that there is an explanation of it on Discussions of Miscellaneous Disputes which is different from what you claim. It states that if one wants to add metal material to a pill, one would have to refine it first, otherwise it would not coagulate as one. In a state of disbelief, Elder Mo spoke up. You remembered it wrongly. There isn't such a phrase in Discussions of Miscellaneous Disputes. Neither there is anything of that sort written in it. The one you read must be Discussion of Miscellaneous Theories written by Senior Uzi. There is a phrase similar to it in there, but what is written is when refining a metal along with the pill, never mix them when it is impure, and not refining a metal in flames. Zhang Xuan waved his hand majestically. He wasn't aware that the both of them were testing him. He truly thought that the both of them couldn't remember the contents clearly, and thus, he casually continued, "Oh, this book is at the corner of the 9th row in the Compendium Pavilion. The words that you just said are recorded on the 49th page. As for the question Shinloshi just asked, if you hold doubts about my explanation, you can browse through 3 Arts of Firecrafting left behind by Senior Duke. It is by the corner of the 15th bookshelf and the explanation of it is written on the 24th page. Let me take a look. Shinbairu looked at him with doubtful eyes. She hurriedly rushed back into the compendium pavilion and in a short moment, she came back with 2 books in her hand, Discussion of Miscellaneous Theories and 3 Arts of Firecrafting. Flipping to the page that the latter said, she staggered and almost passed out on the spot. To think that it would be identical to what Zhang Xuan said, there is not even a single discrepancy. Not only did he remember the contents of the book, he could even point out which book it came from, its location and even the page number. Is this for real?